The day began like any other on the mining world of Karo. The dust storms drifted across the steel roads. The sky stayed a dull gray, and the human worker named. Dan checked the seals on the heavy cargo crates. He did not expect anything unusual. He did not expect danger, and he certainly did not expect to become bound to an alien family by the end of the week. Dan worked in the outer loading fields where human crew mixed with many species. One of those species was the Nera people. They were tall, they had soft scales that shimmered in light. Their voices held a strange musical tone. Though they looked fierce, they were peaceful unless cornered. One of them worked nearby. Her name was Lyra. She carried herself with quiet pride and moved. With calm grace, she always came to the site with her small child, a young one named Ori. The little one followed her everywhere, hiding behind her legs, peeking out with bright green eyes. Dan never spoke much to them, not because he disliked them, but because he never wanted to cause trouble. He was just a human worker, trying to earn credits and keep his head down. Yet he always noticed how careful Lyra was, how she checked every corner, how she never let her child wander far. He sensed she had reasons for that caution. Later, he learned he was right. Trouble arrived on the fourth shift. A group of off-world raiders tried to steal supplies from the loading fields. They were known for quick strikes. They struck without warning. They aimed, too. Grab whatever they could and rush away before the guards arrived. The raiders came rushing between the crates. They pushed workers aside. They swung their metal clubs. People scattered in fear. Some raiders yelled threats. Others grabbed equipment. Entire loading fields shook with chaos. Lyra grabbed Ori and tried to run, but the raiders blocked her path. They were larger. They carried rough tools. They did not care about the safety of a child. Ori tripped on a bolt that had rolled on the ground. The young one fell and cried. One raider lifted his club and stepped toward the child. Lyra shouted for him to stop, but her voice was lost in the noise. Dan saw all of it. He did not think. He did not hesitate. He ran forward. He reached the child just as the club dropped, without planning it, without caring about the risk. He placed himself between Ori and the raider. The blows landed on him instead. He felt the strike on his back, then on his shoulder. The pain shot through him, but he stayed there. He shielded the young one with his body. Lyra screamed. Another raider turned to her, but Dan kept holding the child close. The raiders noticed he refused to move, that he kept protecting someone who was not even his. One of them stepped forward again. Dan braced himself. He thought he might not stay standing much longer, but he refused to move. Then the guards arrived. Their alarms cut through the dust. Their drones flew over the site. The raiders panicked. They knew they were outnumbered. They fled through the side gates, leaving only dust and confusion behind. The danger was gone, but Dan remained on his knees, breathing hard, sweating, trying to steady himself. Ori clung to him. The child trembled, small hands gripping his shirt. The young one refused to let go. Lyra rushed to them. She placed her hands on the child. Her voice shook. Her eyes were wide as she looked at the human who had taken the blows. Her scales shifted colors, a sign of deep emotion among the Nerish. Spoke in a soft tone. You protected my child. Then forced a weak smile. Someone had two workers gathered around. Medics checked Dan's injuries. They wrapped his shoulder. They helped him stand. But even while injured, Dan kept glancing at Ori. The child still held his arm with quiet trust. Lyra watched this. She kept her hand over her heart, a gesture of deep respect in her culture. But Dan did not know that. Yet news spread fast. By the next day, every worker on the site had heard what happened. Even the station officials sent a message thanking him. But Dan did not care about praise. He cared only that the child was safe. When Lyra came to the human camp later that evening, Dan felt a strange tension. Not fear, but uncertainty. The Nera rarely visited the human side of the settlement. It meant something. Lyra stood at his doorway, with Ori beside her. The child ran to him without hesitation. Dan knelt to greet the young one. He lifted Ori into his arms carefully. The child smiled. The child felt safe with him. Lyra watched the moment. She took a slow breath. Then she spoke words he did not expect among the Nera. When someone saves a young one, a bond is formed. A life link, a claim of trust, a claim of protection. By our law, you are now part of our circle. I claim you. Dan froze. He did not understand. Claimed circle. What did that mean? He looked between Lyra and Ori, unsure if he was supposed to agree. Refuse bow run, he asked. What does being claimed mean? Lyra stepped closer. Her voice stayed steady. It means you are part of my family. Dan nearly dropped. The child in shock. Family him with them. Lyra continued. It does not bind you against your will. It does not control your life. It only means we accept you. We honor you. And we protect you as you protected us. Dan felt heat rise in his face. He had never been part of anything like that. Back on Earth, he had been alone. He worked jobs that kept him moving from place to place. No strong friendships, no family near him. He lived quietly. No one ever claimed him. No one ever held on to him. But now an alien. Mother spoke as if he was important. He shook his head, trying to calm himself. He said, I do not know your customs. I do not want to disrespect them. But I do not know if I can be part of your family. Lyra placed her hand on his uninjured arm. Her touch was light, warm, calm. You already are. You chose it when you stood over my child. Your actions gave us your answer. We only speak it aloud. Ori pressed their forehead to his chest, as if agreeing. Dan exhaled slowly. He looked at the small one, at the mother. At the quiet sincerity in her eyes, he realized he did not feel trapped. He felt something else, something he had not felt in a long time. Belonging. By the next week, he found himself spending time at the Nera quarters. Lyra showed him their traditions. She explained the meaning of each gesture. She guided him with patience. Ori followed him everywhere. The child grew attached to him. Nera workers began greeting him with open arms. Some called him brother. Others called him shield. It surprised him each time, but he accepted the names with quiet humilities. Still, Dan doubted himself. He wondered if he deserved such a place. He wondered if he was taking too much. He wondered if this was all out of obligation, rather than true welcome one evening. After the long shift, he sat outside the Nera living hall. He watched the sky as the 2 moons rose. Lyra joined him. She stood beside him in silence. Then she said, You are troubled. Dan nodded. I do not want to be a burden. I do not want to take something. I should not. Lyra sat beside him. She kept her eyes on the moons. Her scales shone in the pale light. She said, Among my people, choosing a guardian for a young one is sacred. But the young one also chooses. Ori chose you. And I am the mother. I choose you as well, not from duty, but respect, and because you carry a heart that protects before it fears. Dan swallowed hard. He did not know what to say. Lyra spoke again. When I say I claim you, I do not bind you. I welcome you. There is a difference. Dan turned his head. Their eyes met. He asked, And what am I supposed to do? Now Lyra smiled softly. Be with us. Walk with us. Let us share your burdens as you shared ours. Ori ran out of the hall. Just then, the child climbed into Dan's lap, laughing with gentle joy. Lyra watched them, her eyes warm, her posture relaxed in that moment. Dan felt something settle in his chest, a feeling he had forgotten peace as weeks passed. Dan learned the customs of the Nera. He learned their songs, their greetings, their ways of showing gratitude. He learned that being claimed was not ownership, but connection. It meant he had people who watched his back, people who valued his presence, people who wanted him. He also discovered the danger was not over. The raiders had marked the Nera for theft. They returned in secret, watching the site, planning another strike. One night, Dan saw shadows moving near the edge of the settlement. He alerted the guards. But before they arrived, the raiders attacked again. They came for the supplies. But they also came for the Nera quarters. They thought the Nera were weak. They were wrong. Van stood in front of the quarters with several Nera guards. Lyra stood at the door, keeping Ori behind her. Dan fought beside the Nera, not with weapons, but with the strength of someone who refused to let harm come to the people who welcomed him. When the guards arrived, the raiders fled again, leaving behind a broken supply crate and several bruised workers, but no one hurt the child. No one touched Lyra after. The danger past. Lyra checked Dan's injuries. He had a cut on his arm, a bruise on his ribs, but he stayed standing. She placed her forehead against his chest, a gesture of deep bond. She said, "You are one of us now. Nothing will change." That Dan placed his hand on her shoulder, his voice soft. "Then I stay," and he meant it from that day. He no longer lived in the human camp. He moved into the Nera quarters. He helped raise Ori. He helped strengthen their defenses. He worked beside them, a human among aliens. But never feeling alien, the workers across the settlement whispered about him, about the human who took blows for a child, about the alien mother who claimed him, about the bond that crossed species and culture. They said it with respect, with awe, with quiet admiration. Dan did not seek praise. He only lived the life he found, a life where he was needed, a life where he belonged. And every night, when Ori curled up beside him, safe and warm, and when Lyra sat nearby with gentle calm, Dan knew one truth: he had not saved them. They had saved him. He was no longer alone. He was no longer drifting through life. He was claimed. He was trusted. He was family, and he would protect them, not out of doubt.